With that, Mr. Pompeo.
I should add for that, I think, Mr. Smith gave a soliloquy. I think it was elegant, but more importantly, I think it was representative of the behavior of the Democrats on this panel since May of 2014. Not one finger, not one question for a witness. They say they want to get at the truth, but the truth of the matter is they spent most of their time today, anybody can rewind the tape and find they spent most of their time today attacking members of this committee in this process, and I regret that. I think that's a violation of their duty to the country, and most importantly, their duty to the families. I want to go back to a couple things I talked to you about a bit before, Madam Secretary. So Ambassador Stevens didn't have your email, is that correct? Your personal email?
I'm sorry, what did you ask me?
Ambassador Stevens did not have your personal email address. We've established that.
Yes, that's right.
Did he have your cell phone number?
Nobody had the 24-hour number of the state operations in the State Department that can reach me 24/7.
Yes, ma'am. Did he have your fax number?
He had the fax number of the State Department.
Did he have your home address?
No, I don't think any ambassador has ever asked me for that.
Did he ever stop by your house?
No, he did not, Congressman.
Mr. Blumenthal had each of those and did each of those things. This man upon whom provided you so much information on Libya had access to you in ways that were very different than the access that a very senior diplomat had to you and your person. I had a picture up here a bit ago of a man named Wissam bin Hamid. You said you didn't recognize who he was. Were you ever briefed that he was present at the compound the night that Ambassador Stevens was killed?
We're trying to track down the basis of your question, Congressman. We have no information at this time.
My question is a yes or no question. It's pretty simple.
Well, I don't have any information that I can provide to you, yes or no, because I know nothing about this.
So the question is, were you briefed? And the answer is?
We don't know anything about it. So how could I have been briefed about something we know nothing about?
Great, thank you.
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
Are all ARBs created equal?
Well, there have been 19, including the one that we impaneled after Benghazi. They've all been led by distinguished Americans. They've all been set up in accordance with the laws and rules that the Congress established when they created the legislation to establish ARBs. So I assume in those respects they are created equal.
Yes, ma'am. You know, I asked a pretty simple yes or no question, I guess. And I'm happy to let you expand. I'm happy to bring breakfast in. But when we ask a yes or no question, it'd sure be helpful if we could get to the answer. It wasn't a trick question at all. Are the recommendations of each ARB worthy of equal treatment?
Well, they certainly are worthy of follow-up by the department, and I believe that they have been.
There was an ARB, please, if you put up the poster, please. There was an ARB in 1998. You said this before in your testimony. 200 folks were killed. Here's what its recommendation said. It said, quote, special mission security posture that was inadequate for Benghazi and was, excuse me, this is from the most recent one. I want to know if you agree with this. Special mission security posture that was inadequate for Benghazi and grossly inadequate to deal with the attack that took place. Do you agree with that statement from the current ARB?
I accepted the recommendations.
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
My question, Madam Secretary, my question is if you agree with it.
I don't think that's a relevant question, Congressman. I think the question is, I accepted their recommendations, and obviously their recommendations were based on their very thorough investigation and analysis. So clearly, I endorsed the entire board's work.
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
In January 2014, Senator Feinstein, noted conservative, said, quote, in her report, the incidents at the TMF and CIA were likely preventable, end of quote. Do you agree with that statement from Senator Feinstein's report?
Well, I would like to think that anything of that magnitude and the loss of life could have in some way been preventable. I think that what the ARB recommended were steps to try to enhance our ability to prevent future attacks.
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
Let's go back. I want to go back now. I have the right poster up. I apologize for that. In 1998, here's what the ARB said. It said, quote, "The Secretary of State should personally review the security situation of embassy chanceries and other official premises, closing those which are highly vulnerable and threatened." End of quote. You've told us all day today that you don't think you should have been involved, and I'm quoting again from the ARB, personally reviewing security. How do you square that?
Well, there are a couple of important points to make about this, Congressman. First, I made a number of decisions to close embassy, chanceries, and other official premises based on security. I closed the embassy in Tripoli. I had to evacuate all of the Americans out of Libya. We had to, lease ferries that came from Malta. We closed embassies and other facilities when we had a strong consensus recommendation that
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
it was necessary to do. So that is a statement of secretarial responsibility. Now, with respect to looking at every security request, how high should the wall be, whether there should be barricades placed on the east or the west side, that is handled by the security professionals. So,
did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
clearly, I closed embassies. I recommended that embassies and other facilities be closed. So I understand what that point is.
Madam Secretary, this is yes or no question. Do you think you complied with what the ARB in 1998 said and personally reviewed the security at Benghazi?
Well, that is not what my understanding of the 1998
No, it's just words,
ARB.
Madam Secretary. They're right there.
Well, and I just answered. I personally reviewed security situations of chanceries and other official facilities that were recommended.
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
Because they were highly vulnerable and threatened to be closed. And we closed some. Some we were able to reopen, which is kind of part of the process. With respect to the 1998 ARB recommendations, by the time I became secretary, having succeeded two secretaries who served during very dangerous and threatening times, there was an assessment made that I certainly was briefed into that we had to look at how best to professionalize the security and the expert advice that we were receiving.
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
That was exactly what I did, and I went further than that. I created a new position, a deputy secretary for resources and management. I also had recommended after our ARB, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for High Threats. So this was a constant discussion about how to make us secure, but not whether or not the Secretary of State should decide on the height of the barricades. I think that's where we may not be fully understanding one another, Congressman. Of course, specific questions about.
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
Closing embassy chanceries and other official premises that were vulnerable and threatened, of course they came to me. I had to make the decision. Deciding whether the wall would be 10 feet, 12 feet, whether there'd be 3 security agents or 5, that was the province, as it should have been, of the professionals.
Madam Secretary, here's another one from the 1998 ARB. Quote, first and foremost, the Secretary should take a personal and active role in carrying out the responsibility of ensuring the security of U.S. diplomatic personnel abroad. Do you believe you complied with that requirement from the 1998 ARB?
Yes, I do. I believe that I had established a process, and I said earlier today, State Department and our security professionals have to be 100% right, and I think that, you know, what happened in Benghazi was a tragedy and something that, you know, we all want to prevent from ever happening again. But there were many, many situations, many security issues that we had to deal with during the 4 years that I was Secretary of State. And I did leave what I hope will be a very important additional position, namely the Deputy for High Threat Posts, that now will focus solely on what are considered the highest threat places in the world for our personnel.
Madam Secretary, I hope you can understand the difference between creating a deputy under Assistant Secretary and America's senior diplomat getting involved in personal security. The amount of resources that can be moved, the speed with which they will move, rested only in your hands.
Well, I just respectfully
organizations
disagree
myself.
with that, Congressman. It's been my experience that you want to find people who are dedicated 100% to security. You don't want a secretary or anyone dipping in and out, maybe making decisions based on factors other than what the professionals decide. At least that is my very strong opinion.
Yes, ma'am. Leaders lead. I've just got a few seconds. In all of the materials that have been produced to us to date, I have not yet found the document that was prepared at your request for post-Gaddafi planning. Did you have such a document prepared prior to the time that Mr. Gaddafi was removed?
We had a number of documents. We had a long list of areas that we were working on and the process for following up on those areas. I don't know if it was one document or a dozen documents, but we had a lot of work that was ongoing, both at the State Department and at USAID.
And did you ask for those documents to be prepared? Do you know if you had a team working on that, or if it was just something that was happening of its own accord?
We had a number of people who were working on that. There were, as I said, I sent both of my deputies out to Libya to meet with the Libyans. You know, we can do all the planning we want in Washington, but it's very important to ask the Libyans both what they want and what they expect from us. And so we had an ongoing dialogue that lasted over many months.
Yes, ma'am, I agree with that. We'll get a chance to talk about that in a bit. I yield back.